we can't really constrain future development to completely agree with our current evaluation of what's good versus bad. Nevertheless, I don't think a great pessimism that, AGI is not going to be exactly like current humans, so it's going to kill everyone. I mean, this is like grade B movie level thinking, right? And it's bizarre to me that this grade B movie level thinking is so pervasive in a very sophisticated culture like ours. It seems very commonsensical to me that if we develop AGI systems and we largely engage them with doing compassionate, loving, and beneficial things like helping with medicine, helping with education, helping with creative arts and science discovery. And if we make sure that these AGIs are not controlled by, narrow parties with selfish aims like maximizing their hegemony over other tribes or making themselves richer than everybody else. But if these AGIs that are substantially doing compassionate, beneficial things are guided and controlled by a broad, diverse swath of humanity, it seems that if we can do things that way, the odds are reasonably high that we're going to get AGIs that are, as they ascend from narrow AI to AGI to superintelligence, are reasonably compassionate and helpful to people and can usher in an era of abundance that we haven't known. At least that's the world according to Ben, right? And that seems the most plausible hypothesis to take going forward. But given that there's so many unknowns and uncertainties, of course, we want to be constantly thinking about these matters and trying to understand them together, which is why I think this sort of event is quite valuable, because we're gathering together people who take these ideas seriously and want to think together about them and openly look at what could be dangerous, what could be positive, and how do you move toward the positive? Because this is an amazing and unprecedented time in human history, right? I mean, human history has seen many transformative revolutions, but it has not before seen such radically transformative revolutions occur within a single person's lifetime, right? I mean, the Industrial Revolution, emergence of agriculture, the invention of language were all big, but they took place over many, many human generations. And now we're uniquely positioned to see, A, the biggest transformation in human history, and B, happening within our own lifetimes. I mean, if we're fortunate enough that our health all holds up and we don't get World War III or something, right? So it's a fascinating time, which ties in with the third point, which is when. And again, regarding how and regarding the ethics of AGI, I felt obliged to sort of highlight the irreducible uncertainty regarding these things, along with the very interesting and promising developments we've had in recent years. Regarding when, I mean, there's also an irreducible uncertainty. And probably the number one question that journalists end up asking me is like, when are we going to get to human-level AGI? And of course, anyone who's involved with large-scale software or hardware engineering projects knows, like, people can't even predict when you're going to be done with a video game that's being built, right? Like, I mean, predicting the time duration of a software project which has no research involved in it is still not really down to a science yet. So, predicting. Let's say that I'm right that to get from here to AGI requires maybe 10 to 20 PhD thesis level research innovations, and then a bunch of large-scale software engineering, right? Even if that optimistic view is correct, that doesn't mean you could predict down to the year when that sort of undertaking is going to complete. My go-to answer recently has been 5 to 30 years, which is fairly wide window, and I think if if everything we're doing in my own project works, if 5 years is totally achievable. I mean, everything doesn't always work. But for it to be like 50 or 100 years, there would have to be some really profound obstacles that are not predictable in terms of current known science. And what's interesting is this point of view is not that eccentric anymore, right? I mean, 30 years ago, when I said I thought AGI would be achieved in my lifetime, very, very few people thought that was a sane perspective to take, right? And now people will argue, well, maybe it's going to be 50 years, not 5 or 10 years, but the number of knowledgeable people who say, well, we may never get there, or maybe 5,000 years, like that perspective decreases. And I don't think that's just because of ideological brainwashing in culture. I think it's because of what I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, right? Advances we've seen in computer vision, advances we've seen in natural language processing, advances we've seen in robotics, some of which we'll see when we show off the Grace robot on the stage later today, right? I mean, these sorts of advances are not AGI, but they show that we're getting the technological tools matured, which can then be combined in different ways to actually produce AGI. So with that said, I'm going to turn things over to the next presenter. And I guess we don't need to do questions now, but there's going to be a bunch of panels today when we can have audience interaction and participation and questions and some feedback, both with our face-to-face audience here in Palo Alto and our significantly larger audience online. So this is a new experiment with a mixed face-to-face virtual event. We haven't done this before, but I'm grateful to everyone who's participating via both modalities. I mean, the pandemic is serious, but we cannot let that slow down our progress toward working together to build beneficial AGI. Thanks.
Right, so we don't have any questions for Ben from the YouTube. Does anyone we have time for 1 or 2 questions? Well, I just asked Randall if you'd please make your way around to Albert over here in the corner, and he'll mic you up. Sure. Thank you. Gabe will come with a microphone. You're not allowed to touch it. It's like protocol. He has to hold it for you. Sorry, Toofy. Amazing to see you. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
A question to Ben.
Either.
So we thought as humans that each and every one of us can be extremely intelligent until we realize that our cooperative level of intelligence is far better than a single one of us. And I feel like, what's your take on what's the network that can connect all of those AGIs that have been created across the world? Is it going to be the existing internet, or do you expect something that can be much more interoperable?
Yeah, there's a couple interesting points there. And actually, Gabe, who has been holding up the microphone to you, Gabe and I wrote a paper a couple years ago on what I called mindplexes, which is the idea of a type of mind that's somewhere in between an individual and a society, right? So, I mean, a single human mind is very unified. A society is sort of a collection of agents that can communicate only quite loosely via natural language and writing and so forth. It may be that what we see with AGIs is not quite either of those, right? But more like a Borg in which the component entities are more autonomous than in the Star Trek Borg, right? So you have mind subnetworks that have some degree of autonomous dynamics, but they can also couple together much more tightly than we individual humans can. So I think we should see new frontiers in the dynamic interplay between individual and collective intelligence as we have the emergence of AI mindplexes and AI human cyborg mindplexes, right? Where you can plug the brain-computer interface into your head, such as Randall Cohn will tell us about shortly, and then humans can adaptively interoperate with this distributed AGI/human mindplex network. Indeed, it will be preferable if the networking modality underlying this emerging human/AGI mindplex was not controlled by sort of tribalistic governments, let alone by large tech companies, but was a purely open and decentralized communication fabric, right? And we now have technologies that are building in that direction. Like I remember in 2001, I had some friends who were trying to build a purely decentralized internet, and the ideas were there, but the supporting technologies were kind of raw, right? So now I think it's possible to move in that direction, and of course with the SingularityNet platform, which is the company, the nonprofit foundation I'm leading now, what SingularityNet does is create a decentralized platform and network for connecting many different AI components together in a way that's not owned and controlled by any one party. And not coincidentally, one of the things you yourself has worked on is the TODA network, right? Which is a sort of secure, decentralized protocol for coordinating any software processes, which we are working on SingularityNet leveraging TODA to more efficiently achieve scalable, decentralized coordination of AI components. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done both in the AGI R&D and in the infrastructure to enable AGI, once it's there, to operate sort of in an open, decentralized, and freely self-organizing way. And that's certainly going to be important. Like once your brain is plugged into the decentralized AI network, it will be nice if that doesn't lead to government agencies nefariously reading out your thoughts or a forcible stream of advertisements coming into your visual cortex, right? So that underlying infrastructure layer, as you allude to, will also be important. So I think Randall is ready now. Take it away, Randall. Yeah, so since I'm standing up here, I will briefly introduce a man who needs no introduction, Dr. Randall Cohen, who I think, when did we meet? 2005 or something like that? Quite some time ago when you were in Boston, right?
Yeah.
So Randall and I have been interested in many of the same issues for quite some time. We've been interested in not dying and now allowing others to not die if they want to, sort of a human longevity and super longevity via science, and also in understanding how the mind and brain work, and in what is referred to sometimes as mind uploading, sort of the possibility of reading your mind out of your brain and implementing it in different substrates, which was Randall introduced the term of substrate independent minds for, which is quite a